Hey Facebook friends, Cassie here with Relentless Love, and my husband Dustin and I are here tonight with some very dear friends of ours, Afton and Casey Graham. So, hey guys.
Hey.
So we're super excited to have them here tonight. Tonight we're going to be talking about stronger marriages. Afton and Casey are our Stronger Marriage Ministry leaders at The Hill here in Stockton. And so we're just excited to hear from them and talk to them and see what they've got going on right now. So, guys, welcome.
We are excited to be here. We're so excited.
All right, so we're just going to kind of dig right in. And so tell us a little bit about you all.
So we have been married for almost 13 years this year. We have 2 kids. Asia is 8 and Bryson is 11. And I moved to Stockton 2003, and I've been here ever since. And would you like to chime in on that?
No.
So when did you guys meet? Like, what's your love story? Tell us about your love story.
Go ahead.
We met in 2002, Christmas time, 2002. I worked for Dad at Woods, and one day he was frustrated with her for some reason or another, and we hadn't even met yet. And he's like, "Why don't you marry my daughter and take her away, get her out of my hair?" And
Which we hadn't even met yet.
we never even met.
thought.
At
I
this
know.
time.
We thought that was
Sure, done.
Yeah.
On it.
Yeah.
So I was like, score, and then I'm like, met her, and I'm like, no way. She kind of annoying and drove me crazy, and I'm not sure what happened after that.
Then you married her.
Then we got married. And
Better ask your father about that.
Yeah.
I'm wondering if he regrets telling me to do that one time. But
That's
So
amazing.
he was working at Woods from what I can remember. I mean, that has been a long time ago, but I was working. I was doing baskets, Christmas baskets, and I remember meeting him then at around Thanksgiving time, and we actually didn't really talk until about April, May.
we started talking.
We started talking, and then I feel like the rest was just history.
The rest is history.
Yeah.
That's awesome. So you planned to marry her before you ever even knew her.
And they talked before there was texting.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
People don't really do that these days.
Yeah.
You
so
actually spoke to
communicated.
one
We
another.
talked to a lot, actually.
Were you guys the couple who like would stay up for hours on the phone with one another?
I'd go to her house every night after work.
Yeah, he's not much of a phone person, but he
I
was
drove to Dayton almost
a
every night.
lot. And he stayed there as long as,
So he's a traveler. He's a
My-
traveler.
yeah.
That's awesome. So, and how long did you guys date before you got married?
Year and
So not too long. That's pretty quick. That's
Very
awesome.
quick.
How long had you been together when you actually got engaged? Do you remember?
We didn't really do an official engagement.
Yeah.
Did you buy her like a ring pop? Is that what happened?
Pretty much.
It was more of a mutual agreement. It's very odd. I wouldn't suggest that ever because I have a
It
daughter
would.
now and I would never want that to be the
way she-
case for whenever she gets married. But
Yeah, we didn't go about it the ideal way.
we didn't do this the ideal way, and I don't know why. We just came to the agreement that, hey, I think we need to get married because I think it's that time.
Let's do this. That's
So-
awesome. All right. So would you say that God plays an important role in your marriage or faith? God, faith. However you want to put it.
Most definitely. I grew up in church, and God has always been a huge part of my life. Have I always utilized Him to the fullest? No. But I knew for obviously not right away, I knew for a long time that God had put Casey in my life for a reason. And I have always been probably the more spiritual one out of us until lately. But now we're both very spiritual. Obviously, the last 4 years of our life, we've been very, the hills just changed us in a way that it's brought us a deeper level. And he's came to know Jesus, and before he didn't have that personal relationship with Jesus until 4 years ago. But he always knew that it was a huge part of my life. I drug him to church, and I talked about God, and he knew that spiritually where I was at. And I feel like our whole purpose now, I can see it looking back how God planted. And yeah, we've missed a lot of those moments that we've missed a lot of it. But you know what? God has restored so much. And now looking back at it, it's just like we don't look back at the past. We just want to continue on in what he has for us. And his is a little bit different. Obviously, I was more.
A little bit. I just wasn't. I went to church because she wanted me to church, and I didn't mind. I was a believer, but I didn't really care about going to church. I didn't get much out of it. I think it's always played a role, but definitely way more now than it did before we first got together.
And especially now, like we've always knew that we had a calling on our life. Individually, obviously, but together we knew we had something. We've always had a good marriage. I feel like we've always had a good marriage, and so we knew that we had something, and God had spoke to us probably a year ago. We really should have been doing this ministry, our marriage ministry, a year ago, but that's just something else that a missed opportunity. But we're back. We're where we need to be, and we're seeing lives changed, and our lives are changing because of it as well. And so we're thankful that God never gives up on us.
So true, so good. And something that you kind of touched on a little bit was if your marriage has always been easy. Has marriage always been easy for you? Because I know there's got to be people out there watching right now who are saying, well, my marriage is falling apart, my marriage is a wreck, or I'm single. How does this even relate to me? So kind of touch on that. Like, has your marriage always been easy?
We pondered on this question quite a bit. We went back and forth, and we've had a lot of we've dealt with a lot of other marriages in our life that we feel have just to ours have just were a whole blow, compared to ours. But so I think everybody goes through different things, and one obstacle isn't any bigger necessarily than another person's obstacle in marriage. But for the most part, I feel like our marriage has been easy in that we've not really had to deal with some of the harder issues, death and losing someone close to us, and just things that some people go through that I don't know how to react. But for the most part, I feel like our marriage has been pretty easy, and he can kind of explain why we think that way.
I think it's always been pretty easy. You got our normal stuff that everybody else deals with, but if you don't have the desire to make it work, it's not going to work. You got to have that desire. We both went in it. Her parents have been married for
a long time.
So her grandparents are also married.
My grandparents are both. I look up to my parents and my grandparents. They have, wonderful, not everybody, not perfect marriages, but I see that, and they stay together. And so that's been a huge building block for me in my life. I knew going into it that I wasn't going to fail. Failure wasn't an option. And that's how he is.
Yeah, it's my dad's parents been married for 68 years. My mom's parents been married for 64 years.
Awesome.
And still going strong. My parents got divorced when I was pretty young, so that was something that I don't want my kids to have to deal with it. I didn't like to deal with it. So when we got married, it wasn't an option for me.
Right.
Not an option. So
in that, like, how do you stay pure in your marriage? Because there's a lot of people who maybe divorce isn't an option for them, but yet, you find them addicted to pornography, or you find them stepping out on their marriage, and those kind of things. Even though divorce wasn't really an option, it isn't really an option for them, and they're determined to make it work, but yet you still find, so many marriages kind of falling apart, and they're just kind of coexisting. Like, what do you speak to that? Like, what do you have to say to that?
For me, it is so important to have a good married couple that you can look up to and that can mentor you, because anybody, I feel like for us, if we were having problems and I was to go to a dear friend and confide in her, and she was to say, well, you need to get rid of him, that is not a good friend. I feel like that's such an option now, and I feel like sin is obviously the root cause of divorce, but that's why Jesus came. And I feel that there are times that things get really rough, and I've seen horrible, horrible marriages restored because of Jesus. And so seeing that, I know that, if you're going through something hard, there's always hope. I mean, Jesus gives us hope daily. And not to say that we haven't dealt with issues in our marriage, we've dealt with issues, but we also know that there is a enemy that is attacking, and know that the enemy is getting a hold of your marriage, and that's what he wants. And for us, it's just stay strong, find a good church home, find good mentors that are going to mentor you in the right way, because it's so easy to find a friend that will tell you, oh, you can do better.
Tell you what you want to hear
They
at the
want,
moment.
yeah. And that's just not right. And I've been in those situations, and I can tell you firsthand that I've seen a horrible marriages restored because of, Jesus.
Grace.
I
Grace
feel like
covers that.
people forget to put their spouse first. So
Definitely.
you see people get married, and then it's like, well, I'm already married. Me. Still, selfishness in a marriage is a fireball that nobody can put out until you realize how selfish you are. I mean, your spouse can tell you, your family, but you're not going to see it until it takes you to that point of destruction. I feel like. I mean, not all the time selfishness, but most of the time, anything in a marriage that goes on is based
the
on
root cause is selfishness a lot of the times, and it's just that desire, wanting that desire. I read something today? Desires kill you. Some of your desires will literally kill you, and it's so true in marriage. Your desires, they will kill you. They will steal you. They will rob you from what God has for you. And I think that's just something we try to always, I know we pray about it, and I know that obviously I have my faults, and I know he has his faults, but
Surprise.
but another thing too with that is I feel like people lack in communicating. Even if it's something that you don't want to hear, it needs to be communicated, because you can't fix something until it's communicated. And I feel like even though it's something that's happening might be hard to communicate, that's the first step. Is just putting that out there, and almost feels like you're degrading yourself whenever you're telling someone that you love that I'm having a problem with this, or this is what I'm struggling with, or I'm having these thoughts and I don't know what to do, and I need you to pray for me. I tell Casey that all the time when stuff comes in my head, like just silly stuff too. I'm the first person to say, I need you to pray for me. I need you to be praying for me, because I know that he's the one person I can go to, and I know he ultimately wants the best for me in our marriage. And same with him. He knows that there's something bothering him, that he can come to me.
And
One of us fails, we both fail.
yeah,
That's
very
right.
true. Very true. And I feel like today, especially in today's world, like being best friends with your spouse is like kind of like an old thing. Like, you know, you're not really supposed to be best friends with your spouse. Like that's what your girlfriends are for, you know, your guys or whatever. But that is something that I feel like is so important. And you being able to communicate with him and vice versa in a marriage, like that's what a best friend does. Like, I know that I can call Dustin and tell him anything, or I should be able to, right? You know, and if I can't, there's a problem. Yeah,
Right.
there's definitely a problem if you
You
can't.
have that trust, that bond.
Right.
You have the decision every day you get up to decide how that day is going to go between your spouse. You know, I figured that out a long time ago. I can get up, you know, in my mind, I feel like I'm fine. You know, she's like, you're whatever, you know, not, and I'm like,
Grouchy.
not really, but if you said and think of it, I mean, we have the capability of
Making each other's days. We have the capability of ruining each other's days
Right.
easily,
or making it wonderful.
or making it wonderful. It's our choice.
Very
It's
true.
so true.
Very true.
Terrible.
But I do feel like you kind of have that choice. And Dustin and I have been through things. You know, when he worked out on the road and was gone all the time, like that was really hard for us.
Right.
Not that we had a bad marriage. Like our marriage was great. We always had a good marriage. We were happy. But him being gone kind of took a piece of our family away.
It's
And
tough.
it was extremely hard. But through that, I could have chosen to give up and be like, look, I already feel like a single mom, so might as well be one. And he could have given up and been like, look, I haven't been home in 40 days. I'll just go find me a girlfriend. But that's not what we did,
Right.
you know? And it was only by God's grace that we were able to sustain that and hang on until God opened the right doors for us. But marriages aren't always going to be easy. You're going to go through things. We've been through things. And there's been times like that it was really, really hard. But you have, like Dustin said, you have that choice every day to decide, I'm going to love this person. You know, I've always said love is not something that you feel. It is something that you choose to do.
We talk
Some
about
days
that.
it's hard.
Yeah, we talk about
Yeah.
that all the time in our class. That how love is. You know, so many people go into marriage as, oh, I just love this person and I'm infatuated with this person. It's always going to be great. And no, it's, you know,
Right.
love is a choice,
Mhm.
and you make it every day.
Yep.
I make a choice to love him every day, and I will till the day I die. And that's what a marriage, you know, that's that covenant that we
Yeah.
made. And I think if you go into marriage looking at it as, you know, a feeling, you're going to have a rude awakening in a couple years.
And I feel like, you know, when you fall in love, when people say, well, I'm in love with them. Well, if you're in love with them, you can fall out of love with them.
Very easy.
You know, and then you hear that all the time. Well, I'm just not in love with you anymore. Well, the problem was that you were in love with them in the first place. You weren't choosing to love that person. Now, obviously, I know there's going to be things that draw us to our spouse and
Right.
things that, you know, we especially love about them.
Nice beards.
Not nice beards. What would you recommend to couples who may be struggling right now in the marriage?
Keep on keeping on.
He always says, keep on keeping on.
Got to.
Good advice.
It is.
It's, you know, it's worth the struggle.
Mhm.
Keep trying.
You know,
It'll, you know, there's the best is yet to come. That's something I got from Pastor Joel and Ford.
I feel like too, if you're struggling in your marriage, like I said before, it's you really need good. You need to make sure that you're hanging around people that are spiritually like-minded, and it's huge. You know,
Good
because
influences.
good influences are huge. We've been around some pretty. We've been bad influences ourselves, and just to have that negativity is it's so easy to slip up whenever you're not around people that are like-minded like you.
You gotta have that friend to talk to, and you know, you tell them of course, you talk to them when you're going through something bad, and you're telling them all the bad stuff. But you also got to remember when things are going good that you need to tell them
Yeah.
that too, because you know, if Afton went and talked to her best friend and telling her all this bad stuff about her marriage all the time,
Right.
if something's bad, of course, then they're automatically gonna get an opinion of me if they never hear nothing good.
Right.
So you got to remember that too.
And we're really good at, I mean, we probably did that, back in the beginning when we were a little bit more. I feel like now as we mature, we know, you should never go to anyone and bicker about your spouse. That should be kept between you two, and you should, always keep that, private. It doesn't need to be said because it's just, I don't feel like
Totally
it's
agree.
anything that God would want.
Right.
And I also feel that if you're struggling too, I know that people that have had really, counseling, obviously, there's good counselors. I know people that have thrived in counseling and that have restored their marriages through counseling, obviously with good counselors. And if your friends are telling you that you need to leave, then they're probably not the right people that you need to be around.
Agree. That's good. When you're talking about not sharing problems with your spouse, that's one thing that we always agreed that we would never do from the time we got married, was especially with your family.
That's the worst.
He doesn't run to his parents and tell them, all the bad things that I've done or said or whatever way I made him feel, and I don't do that either. And that's just something that I think is so incredibly important, because people do, they begin to form opinions. And if I went in and told you, Afton, all the time that Dustin did this or he did that, and I'm just so frustrated, like, it wouldn't take long and you would be like, oh, that guy's a twerp, and vice versa. And so that is so incredibly important. And if you are struggling in your marriage, that is the worst thing that you can do, is to go and announce that, especially to family and close friends. This is a great question. I feel like so many married couples ask this question. How in the world do you make time for one another with schedules and children and works and everything going on in your life? Busy people. Like, how do you make time for one another?
People probably might look at us, I know, a little bit differently, but that is the one thing that we have always done before we even had kids, is we always...
Before we were ever even married.
Before we were
Of
married,
course, I mean,
yeah.
that's kind of normal
That's
when you're married.
normal
Right.
whenever you don't have kids and you have nothing to do.
Mm-hmm.
But it's so important to us to be able to spend time just with one another, whether that be a date night or we love to travel together. And, I feel like even when our kids were little, just getting away, we've always made it a priority. And I think that's why our marriage has stayed so fresh in a way as well. I can tell when we need to, by the way, we really need to get out.
Time for a date night.
Time for a vacation.
Vacation. Either or.
Time for a vacation. But no,
A date week.
I feel like,
Yes.
and we get that, we get that feeling. That's just that we need a break
Mhm.
just together. I mean, we get breaks with our friends and we get breaks, by ourselves or whatever, but we need that time together.
It's always been our number one priority. Always.
Yeah.
And, even if it's, she was go fishing with me and hunting with me, and I think grown to even kind of like it at times. Maybe not now,
Sometimes, yeah.
but she did. Go in the ball games, whatever it was,
Mhm.
and be going shopping with her as much as I disliked it.
But it's
But
funny.
it's time together.
Yeah. Whenever we're spending time together, it never did really matter to us.
What you were doing.
We always try to compromise, with our likings and do things that maybe I didn't care to do, but we always had fun and made memories doing it.
Mhm.
And one thing, obviously, that we love to do is when we love football, and actually he loves football. I just like football because he loves football. And I've grown to love it because of him, but that's just something we
Yeah.
love to do together. And we love to travel, and we always come back refreshed. So,
Kick the kids to grandma's. Go. Do it.
and it's hard. It's easy for us because we have people that
Mhm.
because we get this question a lot. Well, how can you just go, you know?
Right.
And
You have a big support system.
we have a huge support system. Our kids are well taken care of by, you know,
Right.
their grandparents or
I have 7 sets of living grandparents. So
yeah.
Right.
And so that's been easy. So I encourage people that don't have that to really try to find someone that they can trust, even if it's just to get away for a couple hours
Mhm.
on a date night. Just go, because even though it's hard to leave your kids when they're little so once you leave them, you will come back feeling like on fire.
Yeah.
You'll have more desire as well for one another
Right.
during that.
Yeah.
You might turn around and leave again.
it's good for your kids to see it too.
Oh yeah.
You know, our kids hate it when we go on vacation together. They don't hate it. They like going to grandma and grandpa's, but
Yeah.
they want to go with us.
Right. A little
And
jealous
it's like,
you're going
no.
without them.
Yes.
Right. And I think it's so important in, you know, especially in today's society. It's go, 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 go.
Mm-hmm.
You know, your kids have, we're gone a lot. We're never at home.
Yeah.
And we only have 2 kids.
Yeah.
And so these people that literally have, you know, if you have a lot more than 2, or if you have 1 even, and you have, you know, to go to ball games and you work a full-time job, and it just all adds up, and you don't really realize the stress on a relationship from going.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes you just need to stop and just, even if it's at home,
Mm-hmm.
date nights at home.
Yep.
We don't do well at those, but
We've gotten better.
we have gotten better.
Yeah.
Sometimes just sitting,
Yeah.
well,
Sleeping.
sleeping with, yes.
Favorite date night is nap.
It's funny because a lot of times now, you know, if we're not doing something, I'll be like, "Are you going to be home?" And he'll be like, "Yeah." I'm like, "Well, are you working at home?" And he's like, "I wasn't planning on it." And I'll say, "Okay, good, because I want you here." And we'll sit, and we might not say, we'll talk. We'll usually talk a little while, but I just want him there
Mm-hmm.
with no kids,
Yep.
nothing interrupting us,
Yep.
watching a movie with no disturbances.
Yeah.
And it's just nice to have that.
I feel like, too, you know, because we always kind of were the same way. Like, we always had a ton of grandparents around, and so we could just leave him when he was home, and we could just go spend, you know, a night together, a couple of nights together with no problem. And then when we moved to Stockton, it was totally different. Like, we had no one. We knew no one. Like, it was just us and the kids. And for the first couple of years that we were here, date nights were pretty much non-existent for us unless one of the grandparents happened to come up, which wasn't super, super often for us. But something that I noticed over that period of time was, because we are a busy family and we have sports and we have church and we have all these things that we're just constantly doing and those kind of things, what I noticed the biggest thing for us was just not really communicating. Like, we would talk, but it was always about what we were doing or what was on the calendar. Like, there was never any kind of depth to our conversations. And, you know, once I realized what was happening and was like, oh my gosh, like, when's the last time we really talked about anything important? When's the last time we talked about our dreams and, like, what we want to do and things like that? And for a long time, we didn't get to really do that. And I felt like that is just so incredibly important, to make sure that you're communicating outside of what the kids are doing. You know, what's going on at church, what's the next practice? Do we even have a free day this weekend to work at the house or take care of things? Because it consumes you so easily, and then before you know it, you've went 2 months and you and your spouse have barely had a conversation, and that's not healthy.
No.
That is
No.
not healthy.
And I feel like, and he reminds me of that a lot, actually. He's really good about that. Because I'll say to Will, don't you remember this?
Mhm.
And he'll be like, no, you never told me. Or I'll say something about something that happened to me that week, and he'll be like, well, I didn't know about that. And it really gets me to thinking, oh my goodness. That's when I know
I'm too
that
busy.
we're too busy
Mhm.
and that we need to stop, and because if I'm not communicating that stuff to him,
Right.
something's wrong because I communicate everything with him.
Right.
So I know I'm getting too busy.
Too busy. And I feel like that is, you look at a lot of marriages today, and once the kids graduate, move out, and they go on their own, they get divorced. But I feel like it's because we've made our marriages more about our kids than we have about one another.
Yep.
And, that's something we've always tried to not do. Like, we've always tried to put one another first and, take the trips and do things together. And even if it means, the kids get left when we go to Hawaii
Right.
or
No,
whatever.
I totally agree with
Because
that.
it's so important that you have that one-on-one time, because when they're gone, this is all you're going to have left. You two. That's it. And if you don't like each other or don't even know each other anymore or have anything in common, that's a problem. And so I think that's incredibly important to make sure that you have that time that you're communicating with your spouse. And just, like I said, even if, I remember one night, we hadn't had a date night in a while, and the kids actually did our dinner, and they served us Anna made little menus, and they served us, and we had little candles, and they went and they watched a movie for 2 hours.
You get the date box.
No, it was a different time, but we've done it a few times. But sometimes you can't get away, or you don't have the time, and sometimes you don't have the finances. That's a real problem for a lot of people.
Yes, definitely.
And so we made the best of it, and the kids pitched in, and they had a blast doing it. But for 2 hours, we got to sit here, have our dinner, talk to one another that didn't have anything to do with anything going on, just talk about what we wanted, and we were right here at our house. So the excuse that we don't have time
or we don't. Yes.
or we don't have the money for the date night, yes, you do.
Yes.
Well, you still go grocery shopping, whether you have the money or not.
Exactly.
Take the kids somewhere. Go grocery shopping together.
Right, yeah.
Just be
Totally
together for
agree.
a little while.
And
Yep.
there's sometimes,
No matter how much fun it's not, at least you're together.
and even there's been times. I mean, even after we had kids, I would just say, I just want to go for a drive with you.
Mhm.
I just want to go for a drive
Yep.
with you.
You go to the farm and dump the trash.
Yeah, just I'm serious.
Woo!
It sounds so silly,
Yep.
but we would do that. We would be like, let's go dump the trash
Mhm.
together. Wow, this
Yeah.
is great. But along with what you were saying is, I think that is one thing that we've always stuck with, and that is why we are so close as well. Is we've always said, especially now, God always comes 1st,
Mhm.
obviously, but we. Casey comes second no matter what.
Mhm.
I come second to him. I know that.
Yeah.
And our kids know that. It's important that your kids know that,
Yes.
and they see that.
Mhm.
I mean, we're
Even when they're babies, when it's the hardest.
Right.
She might be crying.
Right.
We got a friend that's got a crying baby, and it's like, we feel you.
Yeah.
Take the kids somewhere, drop them off, and just let them deal with it for a while.
Yeah. Let
Get
somebody else
away.
listen to them
Yeah.
cry
Just get
so
away
you
for a
guys
while.
can get away. Yeah.
and
Well,
we've been
it's
there.
good for you
It's
too.
hard.
Oh, yeah.
Bad for your health to have to deal with all that all the
Yeah.
time.
Agreed.
But I feel like if that's the only thing you get from this is to put your spouse, God first, your spouse second. I mean, your marriage will be so much better because so many people put their kids,
Yes.
and our kids know that that's not how our house.
Right.
That's not how it's ran, and that's not how God designed it.
Right.
And so, I think that's why one of the reasons we have such a close relationship.
Do you have, and I know I didn't ask you this ahead of time, so I apologize kind of putting you on the spot here, but what advice would you give to someone who is single and they're looking for Mr. and Mrs. Right? What is one little bit of advice as someone who's married and who has a good relationship? What is one piece of advice that you would give to a single person?
One piece. Okay.
One.
Well,
No.
I'm trying to think. I'm
Two
trying to think of my. I'm trying to think of my children right now. I would say the best piece of advice is to make sure that whoever you are marrying or whoever you are desiring, to make sure that they are pursuing God above you. Because that's going to determine so much. If they're pursuing God first, everything else, you're going to see how their actions. You're going to see it through their actions.
Right.
You know, and I could go on with that, but you're going to see what they're choosing
Mm-hmm.
and pray about, you know, if you haven't found that person, pray that God brings you that person. It's the right, God will bring you that right person. And, but yeah, I would definitely say make sure that he's pursuing God above you. I think
Very good. Casey, you got
try to
anything
top
for us?
that one, babe.
Well, if you think you're going to change when you get married,
No.
you're probably not.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
Remember that.
And that
So
is
if
good advice.
there's something you don't like about him, you might want to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know.
Because it's very hard.
You might be able to change it, but it's gonna.
It's not always, it doesn't always go that way.
Yeah. It may not work.
It may not work.
Yeah.
And it doesn't.
I mean, the truth is, like, we can't change people. Jesus is the only person that can change somebody. And if you find someone and you have to try and pray away everything about them, they're probably not the right person for you. So, good advice. Very good advice, baby. All right. Well, do you guys have anything left that you would just like to add before we kind of close with some scripture and anything that you thought of while we were chatting that you just feel like you need to share?
Just make sure you got the desire to make it work.
That's good.
Because if you don't, it won't.
That's good. So true.
And that goes along with selfishness. I mean, there's so many times that I bit my tongue because, you know, or went and prayed. When I get mad, I go and I go off and I pray about it, and that's just dying to ourselves. And that's, you say that a lot, and that's really what marriage, you know, entails, is dying to ourselves.
Daily.
And I die daily, you know, for that reason. I mean, less me, more of him. And I think that's what the mindset that you have to have.
Very good. All right. Well, before we close, I asked the two of you to come up with a scripture to kind of encourage those who are watching. So, do you guys have a scripture that you would like to share to just kind of encourage other people in their marriages?
I think we've got a couple.
We have a couple.
Okay.
Well, obviously our ministry is Stronger Marriages Ministry, and we kind of go off of, well, it starts in Mark 10:6. But from the beginning of creation, God made them male and female. For this reason, a man will leave his father and mother, and the two will become one flesh. And that's always really stuck out to me. The last part, Mark 10:8, is, and the two will become one flesh. Because whenever I look at our marriage, I honestly feel like we are not two, we are one. Mm-hmm. And if we're thinking as two and we're feeling as two, we're not on the same page. God
Going in different directions.
Yes, and God designed us to be one. And when we're not one, we need to get aligned.
Mm-hmm.
And so that scripture is always just, I don't know why. I mean, I know why, but it just spoke to me because it keeps me. I need to know that we're one.
Mm-hmm.
And whenever you're not one,
right,
it doesn't align right.
Right.
So, and then he has.
One of them matches up. Genesis 2:24. This explains why a man leaves his father and mother and is joined to his wife, and the two are united as one. In Ephesians 4:2. Always be humble and gentle. Be patient with each other, making allowances for each other's faults because of your love. Patience.
That's such a good. Marriage
I have
requires
so much patience, you
a
guys.
ton of patience. And
Some of us are better at them than others.
Yes.
And we
I
all
won't
sit
say
here
who.
laughing because we all know that we are really bad with patience. That's funny. So I feel like tonight, as we've talked about marriages and we've talked about issues or struggles or just that it's good and how you keep it good, the word that just keeps pouring out, I feel like, of our conversations is the thought of grace. Like, grace is absolutely what makes it work. Without grace, your marriage won't work. Without grace, salvation don't work. Without grace, nothing in your life works. Without grace, you don't get along with your neighbors. Without grace, you don't get along with your coworkers. Like, it's just grace. Grace covers everything. And when you're at that point where you feel like you want to strangle your spouse over this burning of your property, you I'm kidding, babe. I'm kidding.
Drip torch be here 2 days.
Oh my gosh. But I feel like it's just grace. Grace is what keeps you going. Grace is what keeps you married. Because there are times where you're going to want to give up, you're going to want to quit. But there's grace. And when you accept that grace and when you give that grace, there's no losing there. You're always going to be winning when you offer grace and when someone else extends that grace. So thank you guys so much for tonight.
Thank you for having us.
It's been fun. And guys, I apologize because I'm sure there's going to be so much background noise. We've got a room full of kids. We've got a barking dog that was scratching on the door half the time that we were doing this. But welcome to our home. But I think that is it. And until next time, we love you guys and we will see you later.
Peace.